Okay, good afternoon, directors. My name is Jake Martins, and as the Deputy Corporate Legislative Officer, I'll call this meeting to order and start by recognizing that we are conducting our business today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. In accordance with the CVRD procedure bylaw and the terms of reference for the Comox Valley Water Committee, the first order of business today is the election of the chair and vice chair for 2022. Given that we've been through a number of these election processes, unless there are questions from the directors regarding the specifics of the process, I will pass over some of those detailed instructions and move straight to the nomination process. So at this time, are there any questions before we jump to that part? Seeing a shaking of heads, anybody online with any questions? Seeing none. Okay, so with that, directors, I would open the floor for any nominations for the position of chair. Director Grieve.
Thank you very much. I would like to nominate Director Morin.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call a third time. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Hearing and seeing none, Director Morin, do you allow your name to stand? And that is affirmative. So with that, congratulations to Director Morin, and I'm pleased to announce you as chair for the Water Committee for 2022. And with that, we'll move on to the vice chair position. Same process. I'd open the floor to any nominations for the vice chair, and I see Director Hamir.
I'd like to nominate Director Grieve.
Thank you. And I will call a second time for any nominations for the position of vice chair for the Comox Valley Water Committee. Seeing no further hands, I'll call a third and final time for the position of vice chair. And with that, I'll ask Director Grieve, do you allow your name to stand?
Reluctantly, I do.
And the affirmative response from Director Grieve. So with that, congratulations to Director Grieve, as pleased to announce you as chair for, or vice chair for 2022. There's no ballots to destroy or other business to take care of, I'll please turn the floor over to Chair Morin.
Okay, I have to get refreshed here. It seems like an eternity ago that I was here. We haven't had a meeting for a little bit. I'd like to welcome everybody here today, and I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and we really do appreciate their stewardship of these lands, and particularly our water. And we appreciate the partnerships that we've been involved with them on stewarding our water and watershed. Thank you. So I will just say who's in the room here today. We have Director Hamir and Director Grant and Director Grieve, Director Swift and Director Mayor Wells here for Director Hillian. And online, it looks like we have Director McCollum and Director Cole Hamilton, and then we have some staff as well in the room and online. So we'll just go to the first item on our, well, actually, I guess it's a little bit further down, the management report. Thank you. And second, Director Wells, second. And any discussion on the management report? Do we have someone there that I'm missing? Okay, Director Cole Hamilton, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much, Chair, and congratulations. I just had a question about item 5 on the management report. It's from before my time, and I just would like to know, get a little bit of background on it, please.
So if we could turn that over to staff, please. That's item 5, which is around the implementation of the staff-based actions.
Thank you very much for the question. And Madam Chair, I'd just like if Jake Martins might be able to comment on this and the whereabouts of this direction and what may have transpired since then.
I'm rusty. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. Yeah, so this item flows from the review that was undertaken back in 2019. And so there are a number of implementation items that were identified and that incorporate, as the item notes there, the political interest, technical expertise, and accountability, trust, and confidence. And so one of the items that staff is currently in the final stages of preparing and to bring forward to advisory and then subsequently to the committee is a report that will touch on the value management policy, which the committee had expressed interest in through this report. That will identify thresholds in which projects would go through a third-party review, as well as incorporate aspects of the public consultation piece that the committee has also expressed interest in. This has been on the management report for some time, but like I said, we do expect to bring this forward here in the next month or two.
Thanks for the background, Jake. That's helpful.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the management report? Okay, I have one. I'm just noting the first item is around the turbidity and the Perseverance Creek, and I note that that came forward in September, and it's to be monitored for about a year. I'm just curious, because we're 6 months in, if there's any kind of interim comments that could be made about that process.
Thank you very much for the question, Chair, and I'll just go to Chris LaRose to provide a response to this matter.
Thanks, Russell, and good afternoon, everyone. So that monitoring is occurring with that overlap between the previous continuous monitoring station and the new raw water pump station intake. However, we haven't had a chance to pull together any preliminary results from that process. But we are formalizing that extension with the Fish and Game, who host the continuous monitoring station for that old deep water intake. So in the process of formalizing that extension through to the end of this year. So we'll have over a year of overlapping data, which should strengthen our ability to kind of draw conclusions. Yeah, so that's all I have to say today.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. Or sorry, we'll all in favor, or anyone opposed to receipt of the management report? Great, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to, we do have the item public input on the financial plan, and I haven't heard of any input that's come forward. If that's the case, we can just move on.
That's correct, Madam Chair. We do have none for this meeting, but I just want to say to any members of the public that might be watching this is your opportunity to provide input. We present all of our financial plans in public meetings, and Chris LaRose will be winding us through the financial plan for the water service. And certainly we are available for consideration of input that will be shared with you, the directors, in advance of you adopting the bylaws that put these policies into place.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Comox Valley Water Committee voting structure, and I'll turn it on to staff to outline that report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and it is presented for your information. This is an annual matter that we present to the Water Committee in consideration of consumption and the voting that applies to the Water Committee. Staff are available to answer any of your questions. Otherwise, I think the report is fairly straightforward.
Okay, we'll go to Director Grant, please. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So on an annual basis, I bring this up as being completely wrong way to be doing the voting. You know, when you look at Courtney, they've gone up about almost 10% since 1995. We, on the other hand, have gone down by almost 3.5%. And yet that gets us farther away from getting another vote on this board. When I look at the structure and see one community can outvote everybody else, that's just simply a bad structure. It's also a bad structure when you get rewarded for consumption in 2022. That may well have been a good system back in 1995, but it no longer is. And I think it's time we look at that. I brought this up last year and the chair said she was going to look at this. Now I know things got busy, but I would really like to have a look at this and get a more equitable plan within the next, preferably before the next election. But, you know, it was something that was going to be on the table and it never did come back. So I register my complaint again.
Right. Thank you, Director Grieve. I did revisit actually both the 1995 report and the 2012 the service review report. I think that if there are any directors who would like to propose a motion or something on that we could look at that. That's sort of where I had left it, but we can go on to, unless you wanted to comment, Director Grieve, we'll go, or sorry, Grant will go on to Director Grieve. Okay, sorry. I don't know which is which, sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
Just quickly, we both start with G. GR. But he has an A, so he gets to go first, and I got an E for Grieve. Yeah, this is something we've been bringing up probably since the get-go for at least 14 years now, every single inaugural meeting. But it is worth considering because, you know, obviously the electoral areas, we can't have less than one vote. And if you see, you know, my consumption is way down anyway. It's just sort of, you know, a cursory seat at the table. But when you look at the per capita on that, you know, we've got Courtney now with a population 28,420. Comox is 14,806 and just somehow squeaked below the 15,000 mark again this time. I don't know how they do it. But but when you look at what, you know, as far as, you know, trying to limit consumption and conservation, all those good things, it kind of just the very premise of how it's put together kind of flies in the face of all that. And when you do it down on a per capita basis, Comox is using 159.5 cubes per capita. Courtney is 189.23. So that's considerable, that, you know, 30 more cubes per person per year. So obviously, I know I don't bring up that water meter thing again so close to an election, but, you know, there's got to be some ways we can get people to be more conscious of water use. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grieve. And Director Arbour. I'm still showing two.
Oh, you turned me on by mistake. Oh, we're both on. I'll wait though. I'll just stand by.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm not surprised Dr. Grant bring this up again. I guess a couple of years ago we did receive the water conservation report from the city of Courtney, and there's a number of great measures in there. But it's true, there isn't the smart the water meters, and it's really a decision of Courtney. I have made the comment last year that you know, the board of the water committee could attempt a resolution that in order to get water from the system, you have to have meters. Now I don't know if we would get defeated by Courtney if this was proposed, but it would definitely lead to changes. I'm quite willing to support a motion to at least explore the governance, as Director Grant said, for now, and see where those kinds of discussions lead us. But I don't know to staff if this is the type of work that can be just conducted ad hoc, or whether there is a need for service review in order to do that kind of work. Thank you.
Right, maybe we could turn it over to staff to make some comment before we go on to the next speakers, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair and directors. I'll just ask Jake Martins to come forward and maybe describe a little bit about what was done recently and what might be required if there was really to be a commitment to changing the voting structure, because that certainly can be done. So I'll just ask Jake to comment.
Are we on?
Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. Yeah, so as was just mentioned with respect to the management report, this item was particularly considered as part of the utilities governance study that was undertaken in 2018 and concluded, I think, in 2019. That process looked at political interference, who was at the table, the voting voice and decisions, technical expertise and oversight, accountability, trust, confidence, and a number of other items. So it was fairly thorough. And while there was not resolution to the specific voting matters, I think that recognized certainly the complexity of the situation and identifying what is a model that the parties would support and that they feel is reflective of the desires. I think at this point, there was conversations at the management committee back during a part of that review, and it would be worth reinstigating those conversations. I think if there was interest at the committee level to look at another option to at least explore where the parties are at with regard to potential solutions or a path forward in this regard. Yeah, unless there's any specific questions, I'll leave my comments at that.
So would it be correct then that another service review would have to occur, or just we could look at the voting structure?
No, yeah. So my apologies if I didn't address that. So the voting is provided in bylaw 1783, which is a service establishment bylaw. And so if it was desired to seek a change to that, an amendment to that bylaw would need to be passed. It's not an onerous process, but certainly a legislative process would have to be followed for that. I think the question is determining what would be the desired amendment to that bylaw in which the parties would support that change, as the bylaw would require to be consented to by at least 2/3 of the participants in the service. So yeah, a service review would certainly is an option, but again, I think if the narrow focus of this is to simply explore what may be possible with regards to a change in the voting model, then perhaps staff from each of the municipalities in the regional district could at least consider that matter through the advisory committee.
Great, thank you.
So my light was flashing, then it went red, and now Bob's is flashing. So I'm not sure who's first, but you're welcome to go if you like, since you haven't had a chance yet. Oh, okay.
Sorry, for clarification, on the honesty policy, who was first? Was it Director Grant?
Well, I don't know, but Bob's going to talk about something different.
Okay,
so,
that's fine.
So he gave me the wave to go ahead if I wanted to.
All right, thank you.
So I'm not 100% sure what Jake just said there, but what I really want, what I'd really like to have happen here is that we have a review of this to find a more equitable structure for the water. I'm not like we talked about service reviews and all of those things. I would be happy if staff just brought us a report to give us some basic ideas of what we could do to make it work. Like for me, I look at this and go, whenever you've got a community that has enough votes to dominate the entire board, that's not a correct system. And so it would add comfort. Like I'm not asking for us to all of a sudden jump up to be equal. We're not that big. But there should be a system in there that says if everybody else really dislikes what Courtney in this case wants to do, they should have the ability to say no. And in this case, we don't have that ability. So, I would be, I had a motion written down here. I don't know if it's adequate or not, because then Jake started talking and screwed it all up. But the motion was to have staff find a more equitable voting structure for the water committee. Now, I don't know if that fits in with what he had to say, or maybe you could give me some advice on that.
Madam
So
Chair,
Director Grant, would your motion then be a staff report that would look at options for a different type of voting?
Well, I think that if we had some basic ideas of where we were going, we would know what the next step would be then. Right now, I don't actually know the step to take to get there. So what I would be looking for would be possibly a staff report would be fine, giving us some options.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that? Oh, sorry, we're still on receipt.
And I
Okay.
heard Russell, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, we're lively today. It must be the sunshine. So if Russell would like to comment, thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to provide some advice on a motion, should that come, and you first will need to vote on receipt, but by all means, maybe ask staff to come back with 4 or 5 options, working with the municipal partners for the consideration. I just wanted to avoid the use of equity, because ultimately it's the politicians, the directors will determine equity. It will be hard for us to do that, but we certainly could come back with 4 or 5 different options as to how it could look, whether it's land and improvements, 1 person, 1 vote, reverse consumption, right? And some consideration of the merits of that for your consideration. And with that, you might ask us to evaluate or do some more work, but that's something we could accomplish with our municipal partners for sure.
Great. Okay, now we're back to Mayor Wells, but for some reason I can't.
No, I'm on.
Okay, go ahead.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I mean, I'll maybe just touch on it a tiny bit, because this is something that was an issue even 7 years ago when I first got onto the regional district. And one of the big challenges is that the system that we have is the result, I believe, of strife and an actual legal court battle in order to get the voting structure that's in place. So it's just being aware of that. Not that it's a bad thing, but probably that you want to make changes when everybody's getting along. So that seems to be something that didn't happen last time. I wasn't aware prior to ending up on the regional district, but that there's some historical significance there. Really, the main comment that I wanted to make has to do with Appendix A, the first page, and it's really just the terminology that's used there. It has the Comox Indian band listed, and I would probably recommend that we spell Comox slightly different, and maybe we call it First Nation rather than Indian band, but there may be a legal reason why it's in there that way, but it just jumped out at me as potentially troublesome language. And then just a reminder, just because I'm an alternate, I'm not sure, but that yearly reminder goes out to Comox First Nation that I believe they're still invited to attend water committee meetings. But I know their capacity is a challenge as well, but that was it.
Great, thank you for those comments. Okay, Director Grieve.
Oh, I think I'm
sorry.
I might have been here. I know it's
You don't seem to be both coming up for some reason.
that's all right. So just very quickly, Chair, thanks. I just wanted to give my support to the intent of Director Grant's motion. And I just wanted to note that staff seem to have come up with a really good solution for the North Island 911 with a hybrid model of call volume and as well as versus population. So I'm hoping that that staff can come up with something also creative here to maybe solve this solution around balance on the board. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, now Director Grieve.
Just on the light side of things, look on the bright side. The way it's working here, Courtney is also paying proportionate, the biggest amount of this budget for the treatment plant and everything, because it's obviously charged by the bulk rate. So that's the good news. Of course, he gets paid more than anybody else. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Grieve. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to that we are the more you consume, the more you pay. So, there is some equity in that respect. Now, I'm not missing anybody online. Everyone's quiet online, I guess. Director McCall, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing. Go ahead, Director McCall.
Thanks. I just put up my hand a second ago, so you didn't miss it for long.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to the discussion, I certainly take no issue with what Director Grant is suggesting, and perhaps revisiting whether or not the structure that we have is the best approach for the board. But if we're looking down the road or at the possibility of looking at population versus consumption, I'm not sure that would be the most equitable or rational way to go about the structure. as there's a number of institutions in Courtney that are very regional, but just happen to be on the Courtney side of the municipal boundary, like the hospital, like NIC. We have all 3 public pools. We also have a large golf course. And all these things aren't really related to population. And of course, we also have the commercial hub of our region. And all these things contribute to per capita water consumption, but are not necessarily driven by residential water consumption. So yeah, I would just point out that I think that there's good reason for us to discuss this and have another look at this, but I don't know that where we'll end up is going to be able to address the fact that Courtney is just disproportionately larger in this service than the other partners. So it may not be able to address the fact that we do have a voting majority, but I would certainly support a motion to look at it just for the sake of having a good discussion around it and considering whether there's a better way to structure our voting on the board. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Director McCollum. Some more good points. Do we have any other comments before we vote on receipt? Yes, go ahead, Director Grieve.
Don't forget it. There's nothing like a couple of good hotel fires to jack up your consumption.
Okay. Oh, and now we have Director Arbor. Wow. Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my only comment would be in 4 years, I don't think we've had a single kind of controversial vote at this board. So I recognize the theory of the problem, and I recognize Director Wells' comment that it's a good time when you don't have problems. So, but at the same time, if this is just to make work, and but also support it, I think it's good to think about things and for everybody to feel comfortable. I'm the smallest participant with 0.5% of the, of the consumption. So I don't have a huge bone in this fight, even though Royston will likely transfer over to this board in the next 2 or 3 years. Cheers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any hands up online and no more in the room. So is there anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, that's carried. And if someone wanted, Director Grant wants to entertain a motion, thank you.
To say. So what I wrote down is for staff to bring back options, including its community partners, to find a voting structure for water. Now, but I'd just like to run that through Russell and make sure I encapsulated what he was saying there.
Right. So just to clarify for those out there, we have a motion from Director Grant, seconded by Director Arbor. And if you would like Russell to clarify some things.
Did I capture that, Russell, or was there a little more to it?
Maybe just add alternative voting structures. You're looking for an alternative. Yeah.
I don't know how to spell alternative. That's why I didn't put it down. Sure.
You don't need to. Lisa will look after that.
All right, there you go. So that would be my motion by just adding the word alternative.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands up anywhere. All in favor of the motion? It looks like that's unanimous and that's carried. Thank you. Okay. So we are now moving on to, I believe, the exciting part, which is the financial plan. So I'll turn it over to staff to outline that report. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Chris LaRose, with the assistance of Mike Hirschmiller, will present the financial plan for the Comox Valley water system.
Great. Thank you, Russell. And good afternoon, members of the committee. Just a note, actually, Mike Hirschmiller is not here with me today, so I'll be presenting the entire thing. Mike's taking some much needed vacation. So I put together a brief presentation to help guide us through the proposed financial plan. So please interject at any time if you have any questions about what I'm presenting. And I'm just about to share my screen here. Just bear with me. Is that visible in the online and in the boardroom? Excellent. Okay, great. So to start us off, I'll provide a very high level description of the Comox Valley water system, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So the water system provides water to both municipalities and a rural water local service area that surrounds almost on all the municipalities, almost on all sides. So that Service 305 is an aggregation of 5 separate previous water service areas, which now are just a single Comox Valley Water Local Service Area surrounding the municipal boundaries. The water is also provided to the KFN IR1 and not DND, not the DND. The municipalities maintain and operate their own distribution network. So the service really is composed of transmission, so treatment, water extraction, water source, treatment, and bulk transmission. And so bulk sales to the municipalities for distribution within their distribution systems, and bulk sale to the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area for distribution by that service. So up until last year, the water system tapped into the BC Hydro penstock adjacent to the chlorination station, which is at the very upper right of this diagram that was developed as part of the communications program to support the Comox Valley Water Treatment Project. So with the completion of the project in October of last year, all that has changed. We're now completely independent of the BC Hydro penstock system. So starting at the lake end, we have a brand new lake intake. So instead of that tap into the penstock, we have our own lake intake well below the sill of the dam, which means that even in the driest possible years, we'd still have access to water from the lake, albeit with some significant water restrictions. So that water, the lake intake allows water to be drawn from the raw water pump station, which is the second stop on that diagram. And that pump station pumps the water through a 2.5 kilometer raw water pipeline over to our new treatment plant location, located near the intersection of Bevan and Lake Trail, where it's treated and then stored in a clear well, which acts like a large reservoir at the very top end of our system, whereby all water through that transmission system I mentioned, as well as the distribution networks within the municipalities and the water local service area, is distributed by gravity. And that's a change from our previous system, where we, depending on how much water or how much power BC Hydro was generating, we occasionally had to make use of 3 booster pump stations to ensure that water could get to all the extremities of our system. So those booster stations are no longer required with that new clear well elevation at the output of our water treatment plant. And then from there, it's sent down a treated water pipeline that runs parallel to the penstock all the way to tie into that the original kind of treatment plant down near the Puntledge River hatchery. So all of this infrastructure, old and new, is operated by a lean and talented crew of operators led by Mike Hirschmiller. This crew is also responsible for operating the 4 water local service area that are managed by the regional district, but don't receive water from the Comox Valley water system. And those being Black Creek, Oyster Bay, Royston, Comox Valley Water Local Service Area, and Union Bay, and then a tiny little system over on Denman. So approximately 60% of the water crew's time is allocated to management of the Comox Valley water system, and the rest is allocated between those other water local service areas based on time tracked in the previous year. So the actual allocations are reviewed and adjusted on an annual basis. So normally Mike would be here to walk you through some of his team's accomplishments last year, but I'll do as good of a job as I can. So 2021 was a pretty busy year. a record year, really, to be honest. Started off with the second repair of a leak under the Pumpledge River crossing, which again included divers and a stage 3 implemented for the community. In addition, we also developed a repair kit and procedures for repairing a possible leak on our high Prescon line, which goes from that Pumpledge River crossing and down to supply East Courtney and Comox. Turned out we didn't actually have a leak last year, but we got ready and we spent some money to ensure that we had all the parts required to repair that line. We also undertook cleaning of the Marsden Reservoir. This is something we're trying to do on an annual basis, clean one of our 5 or 6 reservoirs, which should be cleaned out approximately on that five-year basis. We progressed significantly towards implementation of our computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS. So that involved developing templates for all the various workflows, work orders, etc., that our operators get up to. We completed a significant upgrade to the bulk water standpipe, which is that facility located immediately adjacent to the summertime farmers market. So that added an additional filling station. So there's now 2 filling stations and a card lock type system for charging and tracking the water consumed out of that system. And then the big one last year, of course, was the final stages of construction for the Comox Valley Water Treatment Plant, and then beginning of operations. So that included the coordination of the treated water transmission main tie-in at the fluoridation station, removal of the UV reactors that had been installed there temporarily, to get us through those last couple of years to reduce the boil water notices, which they were very effective at doing. So we actually moved those 2 reactors up to the plant once completed. We decommissioned the west side, the chlorine injection system that was previously located at that old intake location. We kind of began the modifications to those booster stations that I mentioned to reconfigure and to kind of take out of service the pumps that were previously required sometimes. And relocation of water operations to the new operations center, which the bulk of which is done, but we're still continuing. But that did take up a lot of time from our operators as well in 2021. Just had some photos here, just very quickly highlighting some of the projects I just mentioned. So top left is the new pipe gallery at the treatment plant, looking very, very tidy and shiny. The middle top is the new kind of the controls and electrical building of the raw water pump station up at the edge of the lake. And then immediately to the right of that, at the top right, is the pump station itself, which is entirely underground, just showing that concrete pad and the fencing around it, right adjacent to the boat launch at Fish and Game. Bottom left is a photo taken from that Marsden Reservoir cleaning, just showing the kind of the very dirty water that was flushed out of the bottom of that reservoir. So the output of the reservoir, just very briefly, is a little bit above the bottom. So some material that does come into that tank and settles, ends up below the outlet. So periodically we drain it and basically remove all of that muddy water. But with this new treatment plant in place, it'll take some time to fully understand the implications, but it's very likely that it will require a lot less cleaning, and we won't see that same type of sediment accumulation in those tanks anywhere in the system, because it's all being captured by our new water treatment plant. So just another one of the ancillary benefits of that infrastructure. Middle bottom is part of that Pumpledge leak repair early last year, installation of an access hatch for the divers. So just anecdotally on that one, we did do an inspection recently, which highlighted that section of pipe under the river is still holding pressure, which is excellent. So no repairs anticipated for this year, but we are prepared for the next time when that happens. And then finally on the bottom right, just a snapshot of the smart ball insertion. So that blue foam ball in the middle there it has inside of it the acoustic leak detection sensor that's squeezed into that access port and then flows through the pipe all the way down to the other end and listening for leaks along the way. So this is a technology we're using on the water side as well as as wastewater. And a bit later on the sewage commission, we talk about the groundwater protection policy. That's the technology that's being proposed there as well. And the little bit of highlights for the 2022 work plan. So final completion, which is a kind of contractual term for the water treatment plant. So that'll be achieved once all the deficiencies at the plant are resolved, and we're well on our way there. Should be accomplishing that by middle of March. And we're already beginning to optimize the operation of that facility, reducing chemical consumption, power consumption, learning how to operate it. We'll complete the shift of all of our water operations activities to the treatment plant. We're installing a fiber optic line from the Ryan Road pump station to East Courtney Reservoir. We're initiating a water master planning process for the service, which will be about an 18-month process with close collaboration with the municipal staff. We're undertaking a small leak investigation of the high press pipe that feeds East Courtney and Comox in March. Cleaning of some additional reservoirs, finishing decommissioning of the old chlorine injection system, and then finishing the rollout of that computerized maintenance management system to help us better track and maintain our preventative maintenance system. And finally, the full stripping and painting of our hydrants in the system. Now I'll get into an overview of the proposed plan itself. So first of all, starting off with revenue. So almost all the revenue for this service is derived from the sale of bulk water. So in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, a COVID renewal plan was developed. And one of the actions for this service was to kind of reduce the bulk water rate and hold it steady until the end of this year, 2022. Yeah, I just wanted to flag that that minor increase that this table is showing in projected revenue is due to growth in the community. The bulk water rate is still held flat. This table just shows where we said we would be at last financial planning process and where this plan proposes to go. So it's consistent with that step up to the previously approved bulk water rate in 2023. That step up has definitely been amplified by this kind of temporary reduction in the bulk water rate to 80 cents. But yeah, starting in 2023, we're forecast to go to 96 cents a cubic meter. On the personnel side, projecting a 2.6% increase to personnel costs for this service. Just a minor change in how operators are allocated between services, and then that regularly scheduled wage increase under the QP collective agreement. Operating costs are projected to increase a whopping 16.8% this year, and that's arising from it being the first full year of operating the new treatment plant. So last year we were kind of ramping up. We were anticipating, prior to the approval of the last plan, anticipating operating that facility for half the year. Ended up being more like a third. But this year, obviously, we'll be operating it the entire year. So this is the first time all of the full year's worth of chemical, power, and staffing is shown in the financial plan. And last year we added a new subfunction 302, which is used to track all of our water treatment and water source related operating costs. So we'll continue to track those costs in that way this year. On to capital reserves, and specifically the contribution to capital works reserves this year. So as definitely a reduction anticipated this year over year. So I think that table is old, my apologies. But with the end of the water treatment plant project in 2021, and the conversion of short-term debt accrued over construction of that project, all of that debt is being converted or has been converted to long-term debt. And so now the debt servicing cost for that borrowing is coming into effect. As of the end of the year, capital works reserve was at 3.2 million. a development cost charge just over 2 million, and our future expenditure fund just 134,000. So now that the project is over, that debt is being converted to long-term. Looking out at over the life of this 5-year proposed plan, you see the capital works reserve starting to increase steadily to help us meet our longer-term capital liabilities for the service. So with that major project now behind us for this service, our capital spending is taking a pretty massive step downwards. So you can see that reduction in almost 18 million from last year down to 2.2. And even a big chunk of that is for the kind of last couple pieces relating to resolving deficiencies and a couple of final minor projects at the treatment plant as part of the capitalization of that work. Other projects that are underway, planned for this year, are that repair to the high pressed con pipe, and the bulk of it is actually the Water South Extension project, which is just starting, anticipated to get into detailed design later this year. So these projects will be funded through a combination of capital works and DCC reserves. So here's another summary here. So the vehicle capital purchase, we've got a single vehicle budgeted for this year in line with our COVID renewal plan. Annual capital equipment. We've got a fiber connection for East Courtney that I mentioned, the new connection for Greaves Crescent. We've budgeted for a Puntledge River water main repair, but as I mentioned, it doesn't look like that'll be necessary this year. And then some drainage improvements at the Ryan Road pump station. And then annual capital equipment is the purchase of a loader for the new water treatment plant. 844,000 in the budget for this year to finish off those final details on the water treatment plant. And then the bulk of the spending on the extension of water services south. And again, that project is all flow-through costs. The service itself is not spending any money on the extension of water services south. There's grant funding and then contributions from KFN, Courtney, and Royston to help fund that project. And finally, just a very brief update on the watershed protection plan implementation. So our accomplishments in 21 included continuing with the management planning for Coal Beach property. So there'll be a report coming forward to the committee in March with an update on that process. Continuing our education and outreach program, continuing with the natural asset initiative, installation of a second alpine weather station, and the Comox Lake hydrodynamic model, which was brought through the Water Committee in 2021. Looking ahead for the next year, we hope to complete the management planning process for Coal Beach. We're finished and we'll be reporting out to you on the updated risk assessment for the watershed protection plan and continuing our education and outreach program with increased emphasis on water conservation. And finally, in summary, relating to our corporate strategic priorities from a fiscal perspective, this will be the last year of our reduced bulk water rates. We'll be increasing in 2023 to bring the service back on track for funding our future liabilities. From a climate stewardship or environmental stewardship perspective, all rural connections are metered. Big progress is being made in Courtney and Comox regarding metering. There's still definitely some room for improvement. Water conservation is a priority for all partners, and we're very intent on continuing with implementation of the watershed protection plan. Community partnerships. The service is a partnership inherently between all levels of local government in the area for over 50,000 people. And the watershed protection plan itself is guided by the WAG, which with representation from all key stakeholders. And finally, from the Indigenous relations perspective, the Comox Valley Water Treatment Project was delivered in partnership with their KFN and under commitment with the Mutual Benefit Agreement signed in 2018. We're working, KFN are a key project partner on the extension of water services south to further their economic development. the KFN has been invited to attend as an observer on the water committee. So that's it for me this afternoon, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. We do have Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Chris, for the great presentation. You know, I think one of the really well, I mean, all of our services are well managed, but I know this one, everyone was really watching the new water treatment plant to see how it would come in on budget. So, you know, this is a really great story. I only had a couple of questions on some of the minor projects in this service. And the first one was on the bulk water service station, you know, with going to a card lock system. Have you received any feedback from the users of that system on how that's going?
Yeah, there was, thanks for the question. There was some initial challenges just due to the change in process, but those were quickly ironed out. And you know, since July of last year, there hasn't been any negative feedback. So I think they're all ironed out, my understanding. Great. I was going to ask if there's a comparison, but you know, last year being the drought year that it was, it's probably hard to sort of see if there is a comparative, you know, pre-card lock and post, unless you have any other ways of kind of monitoring how that system's working. In terms of consumption, Director? Yeah. No, we so we do monitor the consumption from that station, and as you intonated there, the consumption was up a little bit in 2021, but I think we attributed that, as you said, to the drought condition rather than, you know, more convenience at that location. But we'll continue to track and report out on that. Great. And then just another question on you know, one of the other projects, the community education and the WAG group. I know we had to cut back during COVID, during our rethink plan, and I just wanted to ask if we are going back to pre-COVID levels for 2022, or what are the plans for how much activity is going to happen, education-wise, conservation-wise? Sure. Yeah. So 2022 is actually the last year of the reduced spending. So we plan to step back up to pre-COVID levels in 2023. That being said, it's amazing to us, you know, how much has still been accomplished at that reduced level by our Connected by Water team. And in fact, we were just talking a couple of days ago about we received a presentation from the team highlighting their accomplishments of last year and what they have ahead this year. It was very impressive, and we plan to bring that forward to a water committee meeting either in March or April, just so that we can share all that good work with the committee as well. Okay, great. I mean, if there was an opportunity to bring back more, you know, more activity this year, I would be up for that, but glad to hear that they're still able to accomplish quite a bit.
Great, thank you. We're moving over to alternate Director Wells.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just, you know, huge kudos seeing how far all these projects have come over the last few years, and obviously the completion and seeing how things are staying within budget. One of the things that I didn't see here, and it may be one of those things that's happening in the background, but I remember years ago, actually as a result of Director Grant's comment around fairness at the water committee, one of the things that Courtney sorry, Director Grant, or you're going to do some karaoke, or but it had to do with the fact that there are transmission lines that go that are City of Courtney transmission lines, but they actually provide the water to Comox, and those operation, maintenance, leakage, all those kinds of things are borne by city taxpayers. And I just wondered where things are in terms of those transmission lines. Like normally the CBRD would have its own transmission lines to each of its customers, but in this particular instance, it actually comes through the city.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure, I can speak very briefly to that. So I mentioned in the presentation that we're initiating a water master planning process for this year, and one of the one of the key objectives for that process is to dig into that topic, which has, like you mentioned, has been part of the discussion for several years now. So that, as I also mentioned, that water master planning process will be working on in conjunction, close collaboration with the municipal staff. So we plan to do an inventory of all of those locations where the lines are blurred between municipal distribution and regional transmission. I understand, what the issue is and what the options are for addressing it. So there are situations like you just described, Director, and then there are others where either municipality kind of benefits from some of the kind of the more relaxed attitudes in the past about that have led to that blurring of the line. So it'll be we expect to complete that process early in 2023, and we'll report out to the committee with the options.
Great.
Thanks. And I realize that a lot of those things are quite historical. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks for bringing that up, Director Wells. Okay, we are getting close to time. I don't want to rush anybody, but we do have Director Grant, and then we have Director McCollum in the wings as well.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at, with inflation today at 5.1%, and our CAO said to us the other day that what we used to be able to do for a 2 to 3% tax increase is now a 5 or 6% tax increase with the cost of goods going up. And I'm wondering if there's still wisdom in leaving our bulk water rates at 80 cents and then bumping them up to 96 cents next year, or if there might be a way to smooth that curve a little bit by bringing them up a little bit this year and making that a little less in the future. Everything is starting to cost more and people are starting to really feel the pinch. I don't see, we did this because it was COVID and we assumed, at least I believe we assumed that the economy would be getting better. I honestly don't see that coming in the next couple of years. I think it's getting harder and harder. So I wonder if that's still a wise strategy.
Okay, thank you, Director Grant. We do have a recommendation coming up in a bit, so maybe we can look at that. Okay, we'll go to Director McCollum, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be quick here in the name of time. I had a question just around the South Sewer Extension capital project and just understanding what's in the budget. It's fully funded by a grant transfer through KFN, but then in the project description, it does say that other users will pay for the service. And I'm wondering if that's like looking further out in the budget, or if there is a blend in that $3.4 million figure that's in the capital budget list or table toward the end of the staff report.
Sure, yes. So just to reiterate, this service, the Comox Valley Water System, won't be funding any of that project. It is conceived of as a partnership between the KFN and Royston, and then more recently with potential partnership with the city of Courtney to help resolve the necessary conveyance of water to the southern extremities of the city. So the exact timing or kind of timeline is reliant on numerous pieces there: the city of Courtney's approval process, the KFN's treaty process, and an assent process with the Royston Water Local Service Area. But we have earmarked some funds in the budget this year in case we're kind of is able to move forward on a quicker timeline than anticipated. But bigger costs likely won't start to be incurred for that project until next year.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. That's helpful. And then my other question was just that what's laid out, I think on page 4 in the table around the operating budget, it doesn't seem to include that amount. And is it covered separately and just not included in the 300 proposed budget?
Okay, I will. I'll definitely take a look at that, and if there's an error, we'll correct that. Thank you, Director.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So. no-
Chair,
Oh.
Kevin DeVille has his hand up. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Madam Chair, through to the directors. Just really quickly, because I know we're butting up on time, I just want to respond to Director McCollum's question. I think what she's indicating is that the table in the staff report doesn't quite jive with the PowerPoint presentation, particularly on capital, because of course that table doesn't include the 2021 finalized carry forwards of capital projects as of yet. We are in the process of working on those as part of our year-end process, and we are getting very close to what Chris has indicated in his presentation with respect to where we feel we'll be landing going into 2022.
Thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Okay, if we can just look at receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none. Okay, we do have a recommendation. Sorry, seeing none, that's carried. And we do have a recommendation as well. Moved by Arbor, seconded by Alternate Director Wells. Any questions or discussion on the recommendation to approve the proposed financial plan? Seeing none, all in favor and opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the last thing is adjournment. Great. And all in favor of adjournment and opposed, that's carried. Thank you all.